Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of the Uncommon Wealth Project, where I'm your host, Philip Ramsey.
And I'm Aaron Kramer.
We have a fun one for you today, do we not, Aaron?
It's a big one.
I know. If you've heard, or even in the podcast space, you've probably heard of Zencastr, but you probably don't know the person that helped create or actually created Zencastr, what we do, and his name is Joshua Nielsen. Thanks for being on the show. How are you, man?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. Glad to have
absolutely.
a chance to chat with you guys today.
Yeah. So we kind of got to know each other a little bit before the show because we didn't know each other before, but I feel like we're kindred spirits already.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about all things, one, how to create something that you're passionate about. We're going to talk about his family. We're going to talk about maybe the struggles that he's had and maybe where things are going to go in the future. But let's start it out like, hey, what's the first question Philip's going to ask? I never know either, Josh. So here we go. Did you ever think it was going to be as successful as it is?
No. Period.
The famous words.
The famous words.
It started. I started off with totally kind of different ambitions, and the original plan was, I just need something to give financial independence to my family. I also wanted geographic independence. My wife, she lives in New Zealand, and we were having a baby, and I was going to have to travel there to do it there because she wanted to be with her family, and it was hard to get hired, so there's a lot of factors just to like suit our lifestyle that the business started around. But then, and as we get into this, but then, we sort of caught a wave building a company in a growing market, and got good early traction, and then decided, hey, there's a next stage to this once we got that original footing to then, take this into building a much bigger business.
Yeah, that's good. So our listeners may or may not be familiar with Zencastr. So Zencastr is the publishing company that kind of publishes our podcast. So without them, you wouldn't be hearing us in your ears or over your car speakers. You just wouldn't have heard. So Josh, thanks. You're the OG that put them all on the map. But from your own words, what is Zencastr for those listeners that may not have any idea what it is?
Yeah, so Zencastr is, we've become a lot of things now, but our first entry into the market was solving the remote recording problem that podcasters had and still have, which is 80+% of podcasters have either a remote guest or a remote co-host on their episodes. And how do you get really high quality recordings with someone that's not in the same room with you? And the problem was manifesting back then. Most people were using Skype. A lot of people now use Zoom, but the problem is if the internet, at best, it's going to be compressing the audio and video because it only records on one end. At worst, if the internet connection is not great, especially back then, we're talking 8 years ago, you can have dropouts, robotic sounding voices, and things that are really going to annoy the ears of the listener. And that, means they're going to unsubscribe or they're going to flame you on Twitter. And that's a lot of what we were seeing. And so that was the entry to market, was solving that problem, make it so you can send a link to anyone, anywhere in the world, opens them up in a Zoom-like call. But when you hit record, it records you locally on your end, me locally on my end. And then we mix that together in the cloud after the fact. So you have that really great same room sound. Now we've expanded and we realize podcasters have a lot of other problems, hosting their content, distributing it, growing their audience, finding their audience, monetizing, all of these things. And so we've expanded into sort of a full service, all-in-one platform for podcast success.
Yeah, it's super cool. And it's things that, like, as you said, it's evolved. Right. And so, like, we would love to be sponsored by Acura. I don't know if you have any ideas, but if you do what you do. But so what did you do before you did this? I love that you, one, created something because out of necessity and obstacles that you had to overcome. But what did you do before this?
So by trade, I'm a software developer. I, got my first, I just really enjoy programming and building things with code and making things that are useful. And I ended up kind of drifting into the startup space. My first job out of university was a company in LA called Mahalo. It was a funded startup, and just kind of caught the startup bug. And I was helping other people build products, and ending up at working for a company called Techstars, which is a startup incubator in Boulder, Colorado, and got to help several companies get their products ready for demo day and pitching and funding and all that. And I just thought, hey, maybe I could do this too. Instead of just helping other people build, I could come up with my own thing. And so that's sort of the space that I was in before all this. And I'm a very, very, very hobbyist musician, and I had some other friends who were in the same boat who were also engineers and designers, and we decided, hey, let's build something for musicians to help them work, collaborate together online, create license-free content that you could remix and all of this stuff, which is a fun dream. Don't start a music startup if you're thinking about it out there. I went to one of the like SF Music Tech Summit back then, and the keynote address was like, is anybody making money? Like who's figured out how to make any money? And I was
And
like,
if you
oh,
are,
man.
come up here and give the keynote,
Yeah. It was kind of there was a bit of desperation. And so I was like, okay, this is probably not the right space to try and build this. And so, but as I was pitching that to different people, somebody along the way said, hey, I don't know about musicians, but podcasters have this problem with their audio. And if you're already building audio type stuff, like maybe there's something there. And we were like, no, this is our passion, is this music thing. And ended up didn't work out. Team broke up, and I went my way. And then a few years later, I find out that I've got a baby on the way, and I'm like, okay, I need to figure out like what's a quicker path to revenue with what I know and what I've got that can also be something else fun to work on. And I listened to podcasts, and I had remembered that someone said, hey, maybe there's something here for podcasters. So I went and interviewed some podcasters, found out there was a real problem. The technology was just becoming available to actually really solve that problem. And so a bit of just kind of luck and good timing. So that's the short story of kind of what I was doing before and what led to, the beginning of the company.
Right. And then how much did you have to spend to say like, all right, like I think there's a need. Now I'm going to jump all into it here. What's that look like?
So I was not in a position to be able to raise money. Like I didn't have a track record. I didn't even know. I mean, I had connections to investors, but they had much better opportunities than, whatever my tentative idea that I was working on. So I didn't even really try. I was, but I just was working remotely, working for other startups. And, I was, able to charge enough that I could work like 4 to 6 hours a day. And then, just have the rest of that time to work on the business. And so I just didn't quit my job, and I made sure I had jobs that I could work pretty flexibly. And then when I had to move, I ended up following my wife. She had gone back to Australia. This is before we were married, and followed her there. And then it was harder to get jobs when you're in that time zone. So I ended up, actually taking a really drastic pay cut, but got a job that was super flexible, and just like, we have as much work as you want, and you can be super flexible. And so, yeah,
the things you do for love.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
yeah, but it worked out. It gave me that time on the side to just work. It was just, they knew I had this company, and or that was this idea that I was working on. And so, yeah, that's how I did it without really doing too much. We ended up having the baby in New Zealand later, and then we moved to Thailand.
Oh, wow.
And at that point I was like, okay, I actually need to focus on this to ship it, because I had launched an alpha, or I guess an open beta, and there was thousands of people using it, but I still wasn't charging yet because I hadn't even built billing into the system and all that. And so at that point I did take in a calculated risk, and I just like applied for like 3 or 4 credit cards all at once, and quit my job, and spent 6 months getting the billing system built, and then kicked on the paid plans.
That's awesome. How is that feeling for you? Like, taking that leap?
It was scary. But I think luckily it worked out. I don't recommend it. I mean, these were like 25%, these were not low interest rate cards that I was dealing with. I could have gotten into a really bad situation.
What was the conversation with your wife about that? Like, hey, we're going to do this with credit cards.
Good question.
She's always just kind of trusted me with that sort of stuff, for better or worse. So she was happy to just, she believed in whatever I told her, "Hey, I think this is
Yeah.
time to do it. I need to focus on this," because it was a one man team. It was, I'd been working on it for almost 2 years. Had people using it for almost that amount of time. Doing customer support, development, all that stuff, and so it was time to do something. And I had a pretty good idea. It was solving a pain point. We were really the first mover in that space, and so we had a lot of good early traction, and luckily kicked on the paid plans, while keeping a freemium plan as well, or a free plan. And that first month, I think we went to like 17K in MRR.
Nice.
And
Wow.
so, the product is just naturally sort of has an organic growth loop built into it, because you're using it with someone else. You're always bringing new people into the platform, and so
Right.
that just kind of helped it grow from there. So yeah,
Oh.
lucky.
We get to do this every day, where we get to take people like you and take the proverbial leap off the bridge, right? And the scariest part before your parachute opens up is the momentum that happens before your parachute is up after you take a leap, right? But for you, it's interesting. I don't see that it was actually a risky move. Here's why. Because you worked on it. Your risk tolerance was like, I'm not going to just burn every boat that I have just because of a good idea. No, you actually did the discipline and hard work of working on this as a side hustle, right? While you had cash flow on the other. And then the second kind of uh, step was then getting paid less when you're going after your wife, right? There's the second thing. So you're like slowly kind of decreasing the monthly expenses that you need in order for your Zencastr to actually get off the ground. And then so by the time you did it, you had 2 years of experience that people were using it, right? And so when you did finally cross over to the old credit card leap, although be it, you're right, that's a high risk, high reward kind of thing. You had a 2 year experience of just like not doing it cold turkey. Like we have people who have a risk tolerance of like, I'm ready, I got an idea, I'm ready to go. And usually what we have to do at that point is really kind of unify the husband and wife at that time of like, yeah, but your spouse isn't ready for that, Like, so how is it that you both can unify and both develop a financial plan or a financial roadmap in order that both feel comfortable? And I felt like you were naturally doing that. And that's probably why your wife is feeling comfortable with you, is because you weren't going to be like, hey, babe, I got an idea. Let's rock. I got 3 credit cards. What do you think? She's seen like experience and your history and your discipline. And then obviously, like, yeah, I'd love to help you with that if that's the way you want to do it. And I feel like creating something on your own is so valuable. And I think a lot of people will immediately go to like, well, I need a partner, or I need to take somebody else's money. And what we found is actually the opposite. If you can do it by yourself in, like you said, almost any means necessary, as long as you have proof of concept, it ends up being the best investment you ever have made. And so we're kind of at this point where like your parachute not only opened, but it opened in a magnificent, beautiful way. It was beautiful colors and it was huge. And it not only took you down to the ground, but it actually like caught a wind pocket and you're kind of floating up. So tell us, after you've gotten through the credit card scare, when was it? Maybe it was the first month when you said you got 17,000 MMR. That was awesome. But when did you know, like, oh, wow, we can even do more, right? Like, and then the fuel started kind of going. Tell us about that process.
Yeah, I mean, when I started the company, podcasting was not a very sexy space. Like, it'd been around for, I don't know, 10, 15 years or something. It wasn't like a new technology. It wasn't growing particularly. It was a lot of just people that were doing it for the love of the game, not a ton of money in the space. But then as I was building it, and again, it wasn't like me seeing this in the future. This just happened as I was building it and onboarding people into the application. Some things started to happen, like This American Life and Serial. If you remember that, one of the first true crime podcasts,
Yes.
they started getting they hit a milestone of getting 1 million downloads per episode. And that just kind of, everyone was like, whoa, podcasting is actually maybe going to be big. Like nobody had ever heard of that before. And that kicked off just a wave of interest. And, within a year, you had like everybody from Apple, Amazon, Google, I think even they all were launching podcasting initiatives. Spotify obviously got very interested. And that just, changed the whole market, changed the whole, changed the TAM of the company as well. I wasn't even thinking of it like that at the time, but and we got a lot more, just we were growing faster. More people were trying to start their own podcast. Companies like Spotify were saying we're going to spend $1 billion in space in the next X amount of years. And so it was one, hey, there's a wave here that we're actually on the tip of. And B, there's a bunch of companies with a bunch of money coming in here. And if we don't figure out how to like get our money and grow fast, we're going to, have a chance of being pushed out of the space or pushed to the margins. And so that was what took it from being very much a lifestyle business into being, and I will also say that it grew too big. I really wanted to just be a solopreneur. I didn't want to that was my goal at least. But I found that there's just so many people using it that I couldn't keep up with product development, bug squashing, and all the customer service and everything else. And it actually became very stressful. And so I was like, I need to figure out, how do we, preserve the company and grow it, but also like, how do I make this back into something that is manageable and enjoyable? Because for a while it was really hard.
Yeah. So how'd you do it? Like that's like the stuff and struggles that I love to talk about, because as a business owner, you create something and you kind of have a vision in mind, right? And then all of a sudden you're like, this is morphing into something bigger that makes me push me outside of my comfort zone. But I think that's when like real growth happens. So what'd you do? How'd you get it through it?
Well, I had stayed in touch with one of my friends from that first startup that I worked at, and he had gone on to, he stayed in LA. LA was too big of a place for me, and I left pretty quick, but he stayed there and he went to just startup after startup. And then he became part of the founding team of a company called Flipagram. They got bought by ByteDance and then turned into what became TikTok. And so he had been part of and even before that, they were like the fastest growing app in the App Store and all this stuff. And so he had just a lot of experience around how you take a user generated content business and scale it up into something big. Had seen it, firsthand. And, we had kept in contact the whole time. Like he had come to our wedding in New Zealand, and he, he's always been a good close friend. And we decided, hey, come. It wasn't so much come and let's raise money and do the, the funded startup thing, but it was, hey, come help me grow this company and manage it and build the team and all of that. And then that did lead us to going down that road. So yeah, just brought on somebody to help me grow the team.
Where do you think your biggest struggles were? Because like I don't want to like make any assumptions, but you being like an IT guy coding, I don't see like coders being like, oh, I'm an extrovert. Like I want to like love people, and like you're coaching people on how to like take care of my baby is like your passion.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, no, it was a tough transition. I mean, up to that point, I had been, because I was over, on the other side of the world from where most of our market was. I was working in the dark at night. We had a newborn baby. I was doing night shift, like rocking the crib while I'm, doing customer support stuff or whatever. And, it was very solitary. Didn't have a team, didn't have, a lot of that. And yeah, switching to then, not only figuring out how to hire people, but how to hire the right people, and then how to figure out how to keep them, supported in the way that they need was definitely a very foreign to me. And I'm still admittedly not the best at it. My co-founder, Adrian is his name. He's a pretty big support there for the company.
Nice.
And for me.
Okay. Yeah. That's cool. I feel like good teams always do that. You fill in your holes that you have, because nobody's perfect, right?
Yeah, definitely had to bring in some help to help with that, because I'm getting better, but I needed someone to at least show me the way. So
right. So how many people are working at Zencastr currently?
Yeah, we're about 25 people now. We're still pretty lean.
Nice.
Okay. Right. And what do you do evaluations, or like how do you define success for Zencastr for the team? Like, hey, this is where we're going. Maybe define where you're going and how do you define success as you get there?
Well, I mean, once you raise venture capital, then
It ain't yours anymore. Yeah.
you've got some much bigger goals in mind. So that has evolved over the lifetime of the company as well. But now what we're doing is, we've launched some new products, and we've come to understand that a lot of podcasters don't necessarily self-identify as podcasters. They're content marketers, or they're maybe just trying to be a marketer, and they've heard, podcasting is a great way to do that. Some people try it and realize, hey, this is a really big commitment. Maybe I'm not quite ready to be a podcaster. But I do want to have my voice heard. I do want to get the word out. And so we recently launched a new product focused at just helping people create clips from their long form content, or just create clips in and of themselves. We found that most people now are consumers are consuming podcasts more and more in the form of the clips rather than the actual full episode. And so this is sort of the latest initiative, is helping content creators or podcasters and also other content creators figure out how to get their content into a format that engages really well across all of their social channels. As you guys may know, growth is like the biggest pain point for podcasters. They also want to monetize, but that, they got to have an audience first, and helping people do that by way of giving them really engaging pieces of content that they can put on the social channels tends to be the best way that people grow. And we've seen, one of our case studies right now is one of our creators. I think they were getting about 500 monthly views on their podcast, and then we just got them set up with our clipping tool, and now they're clipping those, putting on all their social channels. And I think they've got this is the third week that we've been working with that. They're not even a full month into it, and I think they've got about 12,000 views across all the channels. And so it's but back to your question, how are we defining success? I think it is in light of this new stuff, is we're just trying to really help our creators find the success that they're after. And also defining who those are. It's always been podcasters that has been our main focus, but we've always had like YouTubers and Twitch streamers and other people that have this same remote recording problem. And there's a lot of people, as I mentioned, that try and churn out as podcasters, but actually are interested in a product that can help them create, clips and other ways to get their voice heard. And so helping people find their audience, grow it, and then monetize. And I think, a through line through all of this is I started this company to change my life and my family's life. Then I realized, hey, we have actually an opportunity to change the lives of the team members on the company as well. Everybody on the team has stock option packages. And then we started realizing, hey, we now also have an opportunity to change the lives of the creators using our platform by helping them. Because most people don't just want to, some people do just want to make a podcast for the sake of it. But by and large, they're very entrepreneurial. They really want to grow an audience, and either they have a service on the side or they want to monetize their audience. They want to make money. They want to become financially independent, just like all of us. And so that's, I think, the North Star of the through line from the beginning of the company all the way through now is, hoping to change people's lives, help them do what they love, much like how you guys are, have been talking to me, is if you're doing what you love, then you're not in the grind. And this is what people love. And if we can help them, make money and be financially independent doing it, that would be amazing. And that's what we're now doing with many of our creators through our monetization platform.
That's awesome.
So then, because I've seen the monetization platform, but it's like all foreign to me. And I'm the guy who's just like, I just put the podcast out. I feel like we could do a lot more, be a lot more strategic. So probably need to go to that and try to figure out, because there'd be somebody who probably be like, oh, Philip, like we've had 100 and I think 81 episodes. And the next question comes from an individual that we've been helping for quite some time, but he sold his business. And 4 weeks later has a panic attack. And like, he didn't sell his business for $3. You know what I'm saying? And I was like, that's fascinating. I want to think through that. But anyway, so we have good content. But so I think I need to go to that monetization to close that loop. I'll do that. The second thing that I wanted to ask you is like, okay, when the ship sails and you sell Zencastr, if that's the goal, let's just pretend it is for you. What's going to be the first thing that you do? What are you going to do? And then how are you going to describe what you do to somebody when they ask you? Because there's an identity that is being built, right, Josh, that you have put your blood, sweat, and tears into Zencastr. And at the end of this, there's got to be something that you're like, okay, well, that's not it. But what are you going to say to people after you've sold Zencastr? Money's no object, but there's an identity there. So what are you going to say? And then what are you going to do? Those are the two things, my questions.
Well, I don't know. Is the answer to that. But I can give you some. I actually already went through a form of this when my goal with the company, as I mentioned, I wanted to be financially independent, but the way that I defined that is I wanted to be making $15,000 a month. And because I had read this, or I don't know if it was a book or a podcast, but there's this program out there called 30 by 500, which says if you can get 500 people to pay you $30, that gives you 15K a month. That's enough for most people to kind of feel like they're out of out of the grind and can start, living the lifestyle that they want. And so that was my goal. Like, I was like, if I just get there, then everything's gonna be great. I'm gonna be happy. What else could you want? And then the first month that we turned on paid plans, that happened.
Got it.
Yeah. And then I was like,
oh, maybe it's changed.
Yeah. I was like, I don't feel like, so I'm not wholly satisfied. Like, it wasn't like I needed more money. It was that I didn't have this moment of like, I didn't feel necessarily happy. I was still had a lot of, my problems were still the same, except for that money. That was just one of the many problems I had in my life.
Yeah, that's good.
And it didn't solve all of those other things. And then, the business was also becoming was a source of stress because I was, it was we didn't have enough team to support, the number of users that we had. And so, I don't know if I have a great, like, happy answer to that, except for that, the money is not going to solve the problems that you have. Like, there's a whole lot of other work and self-reflection and self-actualization that's got to happen that is totally orthogonal to the amount of money that you have.
Yeah.
Preach it.
That's awesome. Josh, like, I mean, you talk about what success is. I want to make sure our listeners get this, but like, what you as like a little boy, looking back what you thought you would be doing now, and then now seeing the impact that you're making for people and how you're helping people live out their dream. Like, when you really sit back, how does that make you feel, like that? What you've accomplished so far?
I definitely have a lot of, like, satisfaction in what has accomplished so far. But, as I mentioned, like, the world keeps turning. Still gotta, what do they put it before? I think about life's still hard,
Yeah.
and so, yeah, there's a lot of satisfaction. I mean, I'm really proud of the company and the team, and really grateful to our creators who have made it all possible. And that's part of the reason why we're trying to help give back to them. So no, there is a lot of that. And I'm hoping, that what I've found is that we provided a service to help them get the tools that they need. But now we're trying to focus not just on giving you tooling, but actually giving you the benefit that you're seeking, which again goes back to that. I want to be able to use this to grow my business, or I want this to be my business. I want to be able to do what I love. And I think we all want that. And so the goal has the grand goal has not yet been fully realized. And so there's still a lot of work left to do. But yeah, I'm really, really happy with, how things have played out so far. I feel very lucky. A lot of this was a lot of hard work, but also a lot of just right time, right place, following our nose. And so grateful.
Yeah, but I gotta say, like, I mean, the thing that you're missing too is like you came into it like ready to serve and help other people, like give them something that they need and to help them like chase their goals,
fill a void. For sure. You know what I like about it is that you're doing it with a team. As much as I have a feeling it was nice to just do it for yourself, I feel like, as you've seen, it's harder with a team, but nobody wants to have a hole in one without their friends around them. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not that fun to come into the clubhouse like, I got a hole in one. Who saw it? No one. Or, climbing to the top of the mountain. It's not as pretty just when you're taking pictures and you're coming back to the mountain. Like, look at what it looks like. Well, you want people there with you, right? And it takes longer to get up because other people are slower than you or however they want. But by the time you get up top, it's way more satisfying because, like you said, it's not about the money. And the difference between somebody who is poor and somebody who's rich is that at least the person that's poor feel like money is going to solve all their problems. The person that rich already knows it doesn't. So it isn't about the money, right? It's about how do you feel satisfaction, or how do you serve other people and helping them achieve their goals and get excitement and satisfaction out of that. That's exciting, right? And that's, to me, like, well, how can I invest in your company? Because you've gotten those value organizations right. You've gotten those core values right. So good job, man. That's really encouraging to hear.
Yeah, thank you. I was actually quite depressed after we kicked on the paid plans and hit that goal. And then I just realized, like, I don't even know what I want anymore. Like, I thought I knew what I wanted, and then I got it and it didn't bring me what I thought it was going to bring me. So what's next? And I think we have, figuring out how to expand the benefit of the business to the team and then to the creators has definitely been, a big part of trying to fill that, find a hope in something bigger outside of kind of what was originally there.
That's cool, Josh. So what's your spouse? Because I always like to give you, at least our guests, a little bit of time to just say, like, the support of my spouse has been priceless in this process. So I'll give you that time. So what has your spouse meant for you in your uncommon journey?
Yeah. I mean, I remember, like, the night before we launched the paid plans, which was particularly stressful because, like, Techstars was following the launch and they wanted to do an article and they were going to launch it that next day, and I had to be ready, and I was scrambling to get it ready, and like I didn't even know if it was going to work. I didn't know if the site was going to tip over, all of these. It was incredibly stressful. And I remember, like, that night before, just like crawling into bed and just cuddling, I think she was asleep, but just I was laying next to her and just like maxed out on stress. I was almost having like a panic attack. And I remember just her being there being able to be close to her for that during that moment made all the difference. And,
nice, man.
And that's just one of those moments. But I think more broadly, as I mentioned, she's been pretty cool with me for taking some big risks and kind of trusted me in a way that I think is perhaps unusual. And so that's has been worth a lot as well. And so, I think having the right partner, if you're going to be doing this kind of stuff, makes a big difference for sure.
Right. We always say, if you don't have your spouse on board, like, don't do it. Don't go down the path. I'm just telling you that right now. What would be one thing that you would tell your earlier self before you got started in this? What would you say? What one piece of advice that you could tell earlier Josh?
I think don't be afraid to grow the business, or the team rather. For a long time, I'm an introvert. I'm actually quite socially anxious. It's not that I just wanted to keep a small team. I was kind of afraid to deal with like managing people and the extra stress and pressure and communication that goes along with that. And I think I put myself through a lot of stress trying to avoid going down that path. Whereas if I would have done that sooner, it would have been better for me. It would have been better for the business, and the customers as well. I think the customers suffered during that time because I was trying to wear all the hats and do everything, and I just couldn't do it, and I was max stressed out. And so making that move to grow the team a lot sooner would be one of the things.
That's good. Okay, so how do our listeners, if they need to reach out, or they're like, what's the best way to learn more about you, Josh?
So most of the, like, if I'm posting content. A lot of times I'm doing that on my LinkedIn. And so that's a great place to reach out. Just Josh Nielsen at Zencastr on LinkedIn. And we also have, not so active on Twitter anymore, but you can email me, Josh at Zencastr, if there's anything I can help with. And then Zencastr.com is our product for podcasters. And then we also have Zen.ai, which is our product for people that are trying to create social clips and get those sent out to all their platforms and schedule them and all of that.
Nice.
That's cool.
That's awesome. Well, Josh, I can't thank you enough for just being here, for your wisdom, and just being honest, transparent, and authentic, because it's super genuine, and it's really, I'm thankful for it. So thank you for creating something that helps serve other people. Thank you for going down this uncommon path. Thank you to your spouse for letting you take a jump and a leap, because it's actually been beneficial. And I wish you the most success, and that you could be sitting on the beach and somebody asks you what to do, and you're like, I love my life every day. That's what I get to do, So you've been listening to Uncommon Wealth podcast. I've been your host, Philip Ramsey.
And I'm Aaron Kramer.
Till next time, go make your own common path and be just like Josh. Have a great day.